The Redefined podcast is part of the Win Make Give podcast network.
If ever we're a guest to bring on the Redefined podcast that is going to shake some things up and prove that a bumpy road leads to some pretty awesome things, is our guest today. Holy cow, you're in for a treat. I got to meet this gal on her own private island back in March. If you don't own your own private island, like, what are you even doing? That's what I say. And Britnie is one of these amazing, powerful, superb women who have defied the odds and have done what most of us just dream of doing. So Britnie Faith Turner, I am so thrilled to have you on today's show. Thanks for joining us. Oh, and you are muted, my dear.
Thank you for having me, Erik. I'm happy.
You've got it. Britnie, let's talk about the real stuff. Let's talk about my volleyball game, because I don't know if you remember, we had a chance to play volleyball on your island, and how great was I? Just our audience needs to know.
The audience needs to know, this is quite the excellent volleyball player. I mean, this is memorable, to say the least, so memorable that I don't remember it, but I think it was extravagant.
When I think of verticals, I think of middle-aged ginger white men with a fake knee and a fake hip. So I could really fly through that sand. It was unbelievable. They declared me the MVP of Buck Island. So thank you for that, Britnie. So fun to have you with, and you have such a fascinating, rich story, and yet you are still a spring chicken. Oh my gosh. Give our audience the highlight reel. I want to know the good, the great, the amazing, because then we're going to just unpack it and peel the layers of that onion to see what a freaking shit show of a ride it's been so far. So Britnie, tell us the highlight reel first, because I am amazed with your heart and your action.
The highlight reel is that I was very blessed in that I found my purpose at 12 years old. And when I say I found my purpose, it's always a glimpse. Nobody has the angels aren't writing it up in the sky saying this is exactly, but I knew that I wanted to help people, and I wanted to help people at scale, specifically in the area of ending sex trafficking. And so that was a powerful enough why to be able to overcome the obstacles we're going to talk about in a little bit. But I get this vision at 12 years old. And then I decided, well, the best way to execute that mission is to become a full-time missionary in Africa. And so I thought that was the way in which I would engage the world. And at 17, I got I had an experience where I met a little girl that was trafficked, and it rocked my world so hard that, again, I remember nothing else in my life mattered. Like, I got to do something about this. And so I decided to get into real estate investing, which, again, well, there's a lot more between I decided, but I decided to get into real estate investing, and I go all in on it. Don't go to college. I
want to pause here for just a moment, because I've been that 17-year-old kid who was wrecked by mission work and understood, like, when I had a chance to meet you in the British Virgin Islands back in March, I remember coming up to you afterwards, and I'm like, I thought I was the only weirdo. I thought I was the only one. And my wife still, she's like, it was that moment when I recognized, like, God had placed something on my heart and in my life that was meant to have me view things differently. And I spent 10 years in the ministry before I got into real estate. So I was 30 when I was full-time into real estate, and you were 18 into real estate investing. Like, that's so crazy to me that you were able to blindly and faithfully jump into something like that so early, because it took me gumption and it took me 10 years to make the leap, and you did it at such a young age.
I did. And it was scary as crap, because it was 2007, 2008. So it seemed really good when I got into it, but it was really not cool really fast. But we're not going to talk about the problems you asked for the highlight reel. So I decided to get into real estate, and very long story short, with a series of crazy events, end up buying my first house at 18, and then moving to another state in another city, end up living in my car, working for free for about 9 months. And then 8 years later, I owned my own island. So it's been quite the journey. I would say I'm very blessed, but nothing's been handed to me.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and now we use that island as a place of healing. We use it as a place that people can come and obviously vacation and but they're still elevating themselves or elevating their lives or relationships. And then what I do on my retreats is we've got everything from retreats where people can come elevate a different pillar of their life to
Hmm.
embody what we call whole life success, not just financial success. And then we have 4 platoons a year come through the island of people who are nominated, veterans who are struggling, PTSD, suicidal thoughts, addiction, purposelessness, and or first responders. And we do these actual healing retreats where they start their year off, their whole year with us through my nonprofit. They started out on the island, and it's been so amazingly transformational. So those are the highlights.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Uh,
Sound real cool. You were living in your car and you bought an island 8 years later. Yeah, I did. And I worked my butt off. But those are the
but
things.
the world can look at us. I say us, like, I don't know, on an island, right? Like, the world can look at you, Britnie, and they can say, you know what? Like, she's just always had it made for herself, right? Like, silver spoon in her mouth and never had to work a hard day in her life. And she's just like that. That's the story that so many people tell when it's met out of like jealousy and misunderstanding. And you are like, you didn't just buy an island, you bought a 60 acres, 60 acres. Is that right?
It's 45 acres in the British Virgin Islands. That's a
Yeah.
hard place to buy it for
Yeah,
sure.
45 acres in the British Virgin Islands, which is probably best known for Sir Richard Branson, and that's where he's doing so much of his stuff. And this place is literally heaven on earth. There's zebras on this island, and there's the most healing energy. There's gorgeous everything around every corner. I've I've traveled the world, Britnie. That was the most magical place I've ever been.
Thank you very much. I feel the same way.
But obviously, to get to this point and to have what you have and to give what you give, you had the heart to serve and to make a difference. And then you had to obviously recognize that you had to live such a big life to actually make the impact you wanted. Because when you're broke, we make an impact with our time.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're making an impact with your time and your talent and your treasure. Like, it's kind of the perfect trio. It's basically the Snap, Crackle, and Pop, or the Larry, Daryl, and Daryl. You're too young to know that reference. Nonetheless, somebody out there laughed at that. So I want to say this, and maybe you don't hear this very often, but like, I'm really proud of you. I know
Thank you.
that's a strange thing to maybe say to somebody that you don't know exceedingly well, but like, you have followed a calling that God has placed on your heart at 12 years old. And I think that most of us, the older we get, the more we think that we can't make a difference. And so we don't. And we become a little bit jaded. And we're going to find out reasons why you have to be jaded. And yet you've instead leaned in and have played bigger. So I'm sincerely proud of you, Britnie. It's pretty impressive.
Thank you. And that's
Yeah.
really what the point of the island is and how it fits in with like the greater purpose of, all right, how does an island have anything to do with ending sex trafficking or purpose at all? And the reason we want to heal people is healed people heal people, hurt people hurt people. We've all heard that. Healed people heal people. And when you actually discover the power that you have to change the world and you start walking in it, then all these global issues start to be resolved. And that's the thing, is like almost everything I've started is because I saw horrific things and I got pissed off enough
Mhm.
to say, I'm not going to just live for me. I want to live to do something about this. And I recognize, I don't like the word privilege because people have been really annoying about it. And they like hate themselves. I'm like, shut up. You are so blessed. It means you're blessed and more is required of you. You know, if your starting place in life is here versus here, you know, there's going to be more required of you. And it's an opportunity, not a burden, to be able to help end the suffering for others globally, however you're called to do it. And what I've learned is every calling is just as worthy, and you only have a grace to do the thing that you're called to do. So somebody listening to this, their passion is like rescuing dogs. Somebody else listening to this is child abuse. It's clean water. It's saving the turtles. Like no calling is more worthy than another, but you have to take the time to get clear on what yours is. And so I have suggested people take the time to write their eulogy. And the reason we do that is it gets all the shit out of your life. It gets
Yeah.
all should out of your life, because when you are pretending like you're in the background at your own funeral, ghosting it up, listening to what they say about you, what actually mattered most to you? Not your mom, not your uncle, not your neighbor, not your little community that you happen to be born into, and what they said is too much, what they said is greed, what they, if you were born in Haiti, your perspective of wealth would be very different. And if you were born in Dubai, it's just different. And so again, God, the creator of the entire universe, walks in so much abundance. There's nothing that you're going to ask for that's too much. And the desires in your heart, I believe, are from him, as long as they're pure,
Mhm.
And so taking the time to get clear, what does matter most to me? The only thing guaranteed in my life is that I'm going to die. So how did I live? Not focus on how did I die, but how did I live? And what actually mattered? Because not only are you going to die, you're going to die and be forgotten. And so that's actually a really cool thing that's freeing to say, what did my life create a ripple effect in? Not the glory and my legacy, and who cares? Even Alexander the Great of this and that, a lot of people don't know or care. You could have ruled the whole world and you're eventually going to be forgotten. Or just doesn't really matter, but you still created a ripple effect with your works. And so how do you start aligning these different pieces of your life with the calling in which you want to live? Because you're always going to be depressed, anxious, sad, whatever, or seeking if you're not walking in that true fulfillment. And the only way you can live in that fulfillment is to be walking in your calling, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Was this modeled for you, Britnie? Like this pursuance of purpose, was this modeled for you, or was this caught or taught?
I think I just have been hungry for it since I was born. I
Mm.
mean, my earliest memories of my life are, why are we here? Like, why are we here? Looking up at the stars and being like, there's gotta be a reason. And I've just always asked that question, and I've been obsessed with it since I was little. And so I'm not just here to just live and go out, go to dinners and do whatever. I've just always like, there's got to be a reason. And I've had that hunger since I was truly a little kid.
So you're wired different.
I guess so. I don't know.
I I I like that wiring. I think that's great. Uh You said a lot by saying a little. You said living in your car at 18 and 8 years later you own an island in the British Virgin Islands. That's a pretty big leap. Give us the scoop of what happened on that road, because there are some real high points and some real low points. And I think that if I'm a listener right now, and to hear your story again is such a gift for me, Britnie. So thank you for this time. To be a listener, to say like, oh, boy, I need to avoid that, or I need to make sure I don't go down that dumb path that Britnie got smacked in the face with the branch for, because she's blazing the trail, and I'll happily be second fiddle. Second to market is so much easier than first to market. And so you're the first to market for going from homeless to island owner in 8 years. So show us the way of what to avoid. Give us maybe some of the hardest stuff that you went through, and I'm gonna have 1,000 questions as we go.
So 18 is when I bought my first house. And in the process of buying that first house as a waitress, mommy and daddy didn't give me any money to buy it. In the process of buying it, I learned about this thing called flipping houses, but I'll back up even further. So I'm in Costa Rica, and we're putting on a women's conference, and it sounds fancier than it is. It's just a bunch of women gathered underneath like a tin roof building, open air in the middle of the jungle. And at the very end, we had the opportunity to pray over everybody. And the last little girl, I asked her name, And she couldn't tell me. And I kept asking. And then I asked the translator, hey, what's going on? And I found out that she was so horrifically sexually abused as an infant that she could not physically speak. And she's about 8 years old when I met her. And the sheer sadness in her eyes is something I'd never seen before. And it absolutely wrecked me. And I'll just say it, I was pissed. I was like, how dare somebody do this to this innocent child? And then I found out that it was her father that did that. And then I was even more angry. Like, this is the person supposed to protect her in her life.
Yeah.
And then I find out that it was socially acceptable in this particular village for parents to break in their children, dads to break in their daughter or their son. And that 1 out of every 4 babies actually like died before they turned 1. So again, these stats are horrific sounding, but now that I've been in this nonprofit that helps actually end this, it's sadly very accepted in communities across the world. But those numbers, I just went back to my tent and I got on my knees and I said, God, whatever it looks like, I want to do something about this. And that's the prayer or the request, whatever you do. If you're not a praying person, but that's the question to ask yourself. I want to do something about this. And again, that's what's going to really bring you joy in life. And I got on my knees and prayed that prayer. And that's when I heard loud and clear, I'm going to take you out of the mission field and put you in business. And that I was like, no, anything but that, because I did not want to be in business. My entire identity was like the REI girl, like kicking indoors, rescuing kids. Like, this is my entire life. And I'm sharing this with you guys because sometimes the path is not the plan you would have planned, because you don't have this amazing divine orchestrated thing that you understand. And that's really why I named everything Ariel. It's that big picture, keeping that big picture in mind, remembering it's not just about you, but leaping out in faith and trying to understand how it all comes together. You're not going to know until later. But so I used to hate rich people. And I think that's an important thing to bring up, because you do need to understand that resentment can block you from everything you've ever been called to have and own. And I think it was Disney and whatever church I was in at the time, where we just grew up being told that rich people were bad. You know, it's easier to get through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to get into heaven. And you know, Cruella de Vil and all the things, like rich people were always the bad guy. And so I ended up going back to school after that mission trip in Costa Rica. And there was this rich guy going to be teaching our class. And I, like a very good student, skipped class because I didn't want to hear what this dude had to say, because clearly he can't know God if he's if he's a millionaire.
You know, the smartest people I know are like 18-year-olds. Yeah. They know it all. They don't need anything else.
Well, like a really good student, I didn't realize he was teaching for multiple days. So I ended up in his class the next day anyway. And he was teaching the concepts of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And if you haven't read that book, I highly recommend it. Hopefully everybody listening to this has. It's like the very base essence of what all real estate investors need to know. And real estate is the common denominator of all wealthy people. So whether you're interested in it or not, if you ever want to be wealthy, start learning. So
and by the way, if you're looking for a realtor, I am happy to help you out. But I digress.
I know a guy. So he's teaching this essence of, you know, how the rich, poor, and middle class think different. And I'm not listening. I'm in the back, like drawing out how to build this amazing training base to train all these missionaries someday, and, you know, create this amazing force for good. And then he finally asked a question that I'm interested in. He said, who in here has been on a mission trip? And I was like, me.
Was there a halo shining on you as you answered?
I've even gone to Africa. And he said, who in here has had to raise money for that mission trip? And I was like, me. Finally asking questions I can participate with. And then he said, who in here did not like that process? And I was like, me, because all our friends were poor. And so you spend more money on the stamps than you get back in donations. And, and he said, did you know if you buy a house with no money down, you can buy a house with no money down. This is 2007. And if your mortgage payment is $900 a month and you rent it out for $1,200 a month, you get to keep that $300. And I was like, go on. And he said, that's a thing called cash flow. If you do that 10 times, you can live in Africa and you don't have to ask anybody else for money. And what I love about that concept and what I want all of our listeners to take away from that is, may no one ever be able to cap your calling.
Mm-hmm.
Know that you are capable enough to learn the basics of investing. You don't have to be an elite investor, but you can call Erik. He can help you find a house that you can start cash flowing. And that income can replace you having to work for money, which can allow you to spend your full time on whatever the thing is that you really want to do. It could be spending your time with your kids, actually going on a vacation every year with your wife. It could be serving in Poland, whatever your thing is. And so the point is, we're not meant to be slaves to money. We're meant to master money. And I confused it as a teenager, thinking that, if you have riches, then money is your God. And now I understand that if you have a lot of debt and you're constantly financially strapped, that's when money's your God, when it's all you can think about because you don't have it. And so
I've always looked at money like oxygen, right? It's not the purpose of what we do, but if you don't have it, you can't breathe.
Yeah. Not very easy to function in society. And so I hear this story and I'm like, all right, well, maybe I'll buy a house, and end up finding a guy that was a realtor and asking him all about it. And he went on about interest only adjustable rate mortgages for an hour. And my only note was, don't buy a house. It's too complicated. I had no idea what I was doing, but he wanted a commission and actually pushed me to buy this dang house.
Okay.
It was awesome that he forced me to, basically. And so I bought my first house at 18 years old at $147,000 in Charlotte, North Carolina. And in the process of buying it, I learned about this thing called flipping houses. But I grew up homeschooled on a farm with no TV, so we'd never heard of that before. And the concept is, you can buy a crappy house, work really hard on it, and when you sell it, you can make $10,000.
Yeah.
Which is $1 billion to an 18-year-old.
Oh my gosh.
And so
imagine the Zima you could buy at that age with, like, that's just so many opportunities. 10 grand for an 18-year-old is no joke. Like you said, it's $1 million. It's the world.
Wow, that's 5 months of money if I worked every single day. Like, that's insane. And that's before bills and all. Anyway, so I Google, all right, well, if I'm going to learn how to flip houses, because I found out you can make this $10,000. You could save those chunks of $10,000 and then you'd have $100,000. You can use that as a down payment on an apartment complex. And then you could make $10,000 a month, which was like, obviously those numbers are way off now that I know math, but I was like, what? That's insane money. And with that money, I could build my own orphanages, and nobody could ever tell me, no, I don't have to depend on people donating. And I really liked this idea. And like I said, may nobody will be able to cap your calling. I've since learned that we're all meant to work together. And if you actually want to scale the nonprofit work you're doing, it is best to find other people who care about the cause and do it with them. But that was an important thing for me at the time, to just be able to make my own money and to be able to fund the thing and have nobody tell me, we don't have enough money to pay for that treatment for this kid. And I'm really proud of that little 18-year-old thought, because I don't ever want somebody to tell me I can't help a kid. Like, I can't go save a kid. And I think that was a really selfless thought too. So I Google, all right, I'm going to learn how to flip houses. I'm going to become financially free before I turn 26. I'm going to buy an apartment complex, and I'm going to do that through starting out how to flip houses. So I Google, what colleges teach you how to flip houses? Do you know which one pops up as the top university, Erik?
DeVry?
Yeah, well, in 2007, There was nothing.
I don't know.
And so I was like,
Yeah.
wait, you're telling me this is how people create wealth and they don't teach you this in college? That
Right.
doesn't make any sense to me. Like, what? I'm super practical. And so I figured, all right, I guess I have to learn another way. And so I started calling the We Buy Houses signs, and
Mhm.
I found out that they were real estate investors, and I could learn from them. And when they would answer, they're like, get out of the market now. And I'm like, why? Every book I'm reading tells me I can be a millionaire in 6 months or less. And it was 2000, late 2007, early 2008. And so everything started
Mhm.
crashing, burning in real estate. And it didn't make sense to me because I don't watch TV or the news.
But
What?
I want to pause for just a moment. And obviously we know that you jump into real estate and you grind your way through, because obviously you had to live in your car, you said, for a serious amount of time. Like, what's so bizarre is you got in at the hardest time, which was the best time, which is such an interesting narrative for so many things in life. Is like the hardest times are usually the best times. Not when you're in it, of course.
No,
When you're in
no,
it,
not when you're in
it's
it.
the
Yeah.
absolute worst.
You
But
look
like,
like an idiot to everybody else
uh-huh,
as well. I mean,
uh-huh.
imagine telling everybody I'm going all in on crypto. And crypto didn't even create a global economic crisis at all.
Yeah.
It didn't make nations fall. But you would still be like, people are like, I don't know. Right now, and I'm not against crypto. I'm just saying that it was really not cool to get into
Uh-huh.
real estate at that time. And
Yeah.
so it was tough. So I'm working on trying to figure out how to learn this business. I'm calling the We Buy House signs. I end up becoming a loan officer because the chief loan officer guy said he's going to teach me how to flip houses, and I had no idea the two didn't go together at all.
Right.
But not one dang loan closed in a year in 2008, and so I'm living off my credit cards, waiting for deals to close, waiting for these big commissions, and not one close. So I'm $45,000 in debt, which is like $1 trillion to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Way the world is like crushing my soul.
So I want to interject. $10,000 is a million. $45,000 is a trillion. Uh, there's something. Have you seen Girl Math? There's these like radio stations and stuff doing girl math. It's the most fantastic thing. Stop what you're doing after listening to this podcast and go and Google girl math on like TikTok. Can you Google on TikTok? You're going to. Anyways, it is the most entertaining, painful experience for me as a married man, because I've seen girl math unfold for generations now, and I'm just appreciating it right now with you, Britnie.
Okay, I'll look it up. I don't have any reference to that.
It's okay. I'll hook you up.
Okay. Um anyway,
I threw off your rhythm. I'm so sorry. Keep going.
okay. So I'm struggling, to say the least, financially. I'm buried in debt, and I'm just really wanting to learn how to flip houses so I can build orphanages and save kids. Like, that's
Yeah.
my only reason for wanting to do it. And so I ended up having to work at the Cheesecake Factory, my second job. And that way I could like try to even pay the minimums on my credit cards. And I remember this one night I had to make $350 in order to make the rest of my mortgage payment. Like, that's how short I was. And I was like,
And the average tab at the Cheesecake Factory for a table of 4 is going to be like 45 or $50, right?
yeah, $350 is insane. I was working a double. It would have been, I mean, $100 is like a good day. But I remember just pre-giving God credit, trying to peer pressure him into like showing up for me. I worked a double, and like at the end of that double in a 9-hour shift, I'd made $7 in change. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the worst shift I've ever worked in my entire life. Like, God, what the heck? I'm so mad. And I said, God, why am I here? I'm smarter than this, because I would study 12 hours a day and I'd work almost the other 12. I only slept like 2-3 hours. More girl math for you. And it's the averages. It's the averages. And so I remember slapping my hands down on my waist and saying that, like, why am I here? I'm smarter than this. And in my Cheesecake Factory apron, I had all these real estate books. Just in case there's a break, I would read every book I could get my hands on and just be like, I got to get out of here. Like, I got to help these kids. And I heard loud and clear God say, because I want to bless you. And I'm like, really? because I had just gotten tipped a dime, like a dime.
Gosh.
And I went up to the host and I said, please send me home. I want to go home and just wallow. I'm so depressed. I don't know how I'm going to make it through this. And he said, it's not your turn. I was like, send me home. And right as I said that, these two guys and a girl walked in. And the reason I'm taking the time to tell you all these details is don't get so lost in your victimhood, your victimness. You don't see the miracle walk in the door. Had I been looking down, I wouldn't have seen them walk through that door.
Yeah.
And I begged for that table and I got it. I said, I don't care if I'm here for another 5 hours and it's $5. I need the money. And so the guy sitting in the booth farthest away from me had on a logo of a house on his wedding ring finger. And I said, are you real estate investors? And they said, why, yes, we are. I said, I'm going to be a real estate investor someday. Now, the importance in this, I'm 21 at the time now, or 20 at the time, is I did have a vision past my circumstance. And that's super important for all of you to write down, is have a vision past your circumstance. Know who you are, no matter how much money you have in that dang bank account, because you can lose it in a second. And I said, I'm going to be a real estate investor. And they said, okay, sweetie, you're probably reading Cosmo Girl magazine. And I said, actually, I'm reading Success magazine. And they're like, oh, okay. Well, you're probably listening to Hanson on CD in your car. I'm like, Hanson? You know Hanson.
Oh, of course I do. That song still slaps, Britnie. I don't care what you say.
It still slaps. It does. I have it on the island playlist. And so I said, actually, I'm listening to Think and Grow Rich, the audiobook. And they're like, well, and then they kept asking me these, what I now look at as pretty.
Was it because of your age, because of your gender, because of the Cheesecake Factory? Like, what was the reason? And don't get me wrong, I love me a good Cheesecake Factory.
Questions, I guess. I was 20 years old and whatever, and saying I'm going to be a real estate investor. They were just quizzing me because they didn't believe it.
Yeah. Okay.
And I had been so self-taught that what I had been doing in my free time had set me up to be able to do what I like. The quote that Oprah says is, there's no such thing as luck. It's just simply opportunity meeting
hard work, right?
Hard work. Yeah. Hard work meeting opportunity. And that's what I had been doing. Again, studying everything I could get my hands on. I wasn't going out partying. I just was so hungry to actually do this thing that I knew I was called to do. And they said, well, we put on conferences and we pretty much have like nobody young and nobody that's a girl there if you want to go represent and be our diversity. And I was like, yeah, sure. Automatically
put in the front of the picture.
Hey, there. Yeah. So I went to this conference in Vegas, which is crazy. I don't know anybody there. My brass knuckles got taken at the airport. Be aware, you got to pack that.
Did you seriously have brass knuckles with you?
These guys?
Did the nunchucks not fit in your carry-on or what?
Sharp too. I was ready. And so, but I remember just doing what it takes to be in the room.
Yeah.
And I want you all to write that down. There's something about proximity. Now, obviously within morals, obviously I don't know anything immoral, but like there's something about being in the room with people who are doing what you want to do. And what I don't know all the science, but I do know that you are who you surround yourself with. Pitbull says, show me your friends, I'll show you your future.
That's a Pitbull quote?
It's one of his raps. It's in his rap.
Oh my gosh.
Show me your friends, I'll show you a future. I can't say it right.
Okay. No, you crushed it. That's great. That also slapped.
I just believe that when you see it done, it's now possible for you. And it again shifts all your limiting beliefs to be in the room full of people who are doing what you want to do.
Yeah.
And so I remember I just wanted to get closer to somebody that was doing this. And so I just asked the different speakers to lunch and just was like, can I just take you to lunch? I'll buy your lunch and I just want to ask you questions. And because it just seems so out of reach for me to finally get to do real estate investing. And I invited the speaker and then he started inviting more speakers and more speakers. And there was like 15 people.
Oh no.
And the last available dollars on my credit card would go through and they're ordering wine and all this crap. But I didn't let that distract me. I just remember like, I have got to just network and talk to people who are like this. I didn't need anything from them. I just wanted to learn. And I overheard the guy sitting farthest away from me in the table saying, I've got all these deals stacking up on my desk. If only I had an assistant I could teach how to run my projects, then I could be speaking all around the globe.
Mm.
And I was like, me, I will be your assistant. And it's like, well, what assistant experience do you have? And I'm like trying to extrapolate how waitressing has anything to do with being an assistant. I'm like, oh, but somehow I talked him into it. And he said, well, you got to move to this place called Nashville in 2 weeks. So I'm almost 21 years old. But I'm still 20, and I packed my bags. I accepted a job that was $600 less than the minimums on my credit cards. And I don't know how I'm going to make it, but that was my job. And then I put my house on Craigslist to, because this is going to go well, right?
Did you make the tens of thousands of dollars that you had anticipated with that first house?
Well, hold on. I just renting it out. So I'm renting it out to these guys off Craigslist, and I pack up my car with trash bags full of my clothes, and I head to this place called Nashville. I've never been. And I'm like, this is it. This is God opening the door. This is going to go well. And within 60 days, they fire me. They said, nobody's in real estate, so we don't need your position anymore.
Boy.
The first month's rent check for these tenants bounces, and it's my first time having tenants, so I believed their story. And they're in the house doing drugs and trashing it. I had no idea. I'm like, your daughter's sick? Oh no. Yeah. So I did the only logical thing, and I moved into my car, because the day I got fired was they were putting on a conference, and I happened to overhear these guys saying how many deals they're doing. And I went to them and I said, can I work for you for free? And those are the guys that let me work for them for free for about 9 months. And I learned the business. I worked for them 18 to 21 hours a day. Every day we put in at least 64 to 68 offers a week on average to try to get 1 to 2 deals a month. Like, we were working it. The world was a crazy time. The world's like crashing and burning. And I didn't know any different, because this is my first time being in real estate. Like, I thought that was normal to have to beat foreclosure prices. And there's so many foreclosures, but I learned how to find deals. I learned how to set up private money. I learned how to manage a crew. I learned how to command respect as a female. It's 21 years old in construction. I learned how to design. I learned how to sell. And one of the best things you can do is have a great realtor, and or get your license. And so you can be finding your own deals. But if you have a great one, that's super helpful. But they did not have a great one. So I got my license and was able to bring value that way, which was really incredible. But after 9 months, I made them around $400,000. They never offered to pay me, which is fine. I'm not mad about it. I owe them everything in my life. And after 9 months, I said, all right, I'd like to do a deal as a partner.
You had talked about how you don't get anywhere as a victim. And now I'm seeing that, because words are fast and cheap and easy to say, but actually living it out and being grateful for the opportunity and the education and where you find yourself now, it'd be so easy to be begrudgingly mad over not getting compensated, because you had earned compensation. And yet you're still massively optimistic and full of gratitude, which is, I think, one of the reasons why you've had such the accelerator that you have, is because you haven't let those handcuffs hold you back.
Thank you. I think that it's definitely, I'm just seeing a lot of entitled people, and I want to slap them in the face and be like, nobody freaking owes you anything.
Yeah.
Nobody does owe you anything. You've got to earn your place. And it's best, for what I've learned is to work to learn, not just to earn. And I met a lot of super entitled people around my age, and they're just like, well, if I'm not getting paid for it, I'm not putting in an ounce of extra effort. And if you read Think and Grow Rich, value, money always follows value.
Yeah.
And may not see it the first week, month, or year, but by God, it will catch up to you. And so stop looking at other people. Well, they're not doing this. It's like, who do you want to be? Do you want to be a leader? Or do you want to just be a peasant, clocking in 9 to 5 and just doing the minimum the rest of your life? Who are you going to be? And so that was a very key element to my success, and remains a key element of my success, is to work to learn, not just to earn.
Mhm.
But after 9 months, I said, I would like to do a deal as a partner. I found a project. It makes $45,000. I'm going to make a commission on the back end at $6,000. And I know it's probably illegal, but I said, I'll put my commission in. All I want is I found the deal. I found all the money. I'll manage the crew. I just want $5,000 of this whole deal total. And they had to think about it for 3 days. And so
Wow.
it was just, they weren't used to splitting with me. And after 3 days, they said, all right, we'll do this. And that house was in a flood zone, and everything that could go wrong with that dang house went wrong. But when it finally closed, I remember I was negative $1,836 in the bank, or negative $836 in the bank. And they, instead of paying me $5,000, gave me $3,000.
Oh boy.
And I spent $2,000 of that money sending them and their wives on a cruise to say, thank you for being the first people to ever believe in me, because no one ever has. And, I just remember being so grateful. I got my bank account back up to $0 / plus $150 ish. Right. And I was off to the races. And the next 9 months, I became the biggest rehabber in Nashville. And then the next year after that, I became one of the biggest infill developers in Nashville. And then what year is that? It's like 2011, 12. And then by 2016, I won Forbes' 6th fastest growing woman-owned / woman-led company in the world. And that is when I said, God, I have been, going back and forth to Africa and actually developing orphanages and going in places. I'm trying to shorten the story now because we're about out of time.
No, you're great.
Going in places that I met parents and moms that had to sell their kid into sex trafficking for $25, their little 2-year-old and 3-year-old boy. Mm-hmm. Like, they didn't want to, but their level of desperation, they had to do terrible things. And I remember looking that mom in the eyes and just seeing that she had no other opportunity. And so how do we create opportunity where there is none? And that's what got me into like mindful revitalization of the urban core. How do you bring opportunity to places that have none, and like breathe life back into places that are, in my opinion, very deserving? And so that's really what helped me scale. Was I picked the worst areas of Nashville and then the worst areas of the entire Southeast of America, because I was practicing going to Haiti. I was practicing going to Kenya, in like these slums and places that nobody else would even think to bring economic opportunity. And so it was my practice. But with that, I just was honestly listening to God on where to buy, what to do. And it looked really stupid. I lost entire leadership teams multiple times. And because there's like, what are you doing? This is not how you make money. I was like, well, I'm not trying to make money. I need to survive, but I'm trying to practice to wipe out sex trafficking so parents don't have to sell their kids. Right. And so after going back and forth, again, I focused on the urban core, and then that turned around. People are now interested in living in the urban core, which I guess is what people mean by like, follow your passion and then money will come. Because my passion was like working in developing nations, and then money eventually definitely came. And so I said, God, I'm really good, because there's really not an area I can't turn around. And I'm not bragging. I'm good at 3 things. Elevating people, totally transforming regions, and 1 karaoke song. And so that's it.
Well, which song is it?
I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston.
Oh, really?
A hard one. It's a hard one.
Oh my gosh. Well, the next time I'm at Ariel, because I did karaoke when I was there also, and I sang like 3 or 4 bangers, as really the kids call it.
Yeah.
My go-to is Shoop by Salt and Pepper, where I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston. So I feel like we're in the same genre together.
Absolutely.
Of 90s music, and then it stops there as similarities. Britnie, what's bizarre to me is the rarity of your perspective. And if you don't see it, I'm sure everybody else is like, hey, there's a different view that you have on the world. I think that most people have business plans. You have a generosity plan. How would you how would you help someone who is maybe aspirational in wanting to live a more generous life? What would you say to them? Because you've obviously found a plan from the age of 12 and you've manifested a business and a calling and a career that now honors that. But there's people out there that have the heart, but they don't know how to actually take their heart to translate it to their head into an actual business and generosity plan. So what advice would you give someone like
That's a
that?
really good question, because I started a thing called G-Force Entrepreneurs, and the whole point of it is to like do exactly what you're saying. It's 12 weeks of like learning how to do it. And this is not, nobody's pitching anything on this podcast, but it's like, that is what I do. It's starting with figuring out your why. And then I won't coach people in business because I don't want to help you want to jump off a cliff. Business is hard. It's not worth it unless you know why you're doing it. Even what are you working for? What do you even need the money for? But if we know why we need it, we're able to overcome it. It's just like how it's actually physically impossible for a mom to pick up a car. But if her freaking baby's underneath that car, the car's getting picked up. And so that's what a powerful enough why and passion can do for you. And so in that, it's like starting with that vision and then turning it into a life plan for you, you as a person, and then taking all of your passions, dreams, like, how do you want your relationships? How do you want your impact? How do you want to spend your life? Then we create the vehicle for the money to be able to come into your life. And so it could be starting a business. It could be learning stocks. It could be real estate investing, whatever that is. But I'm not going to just help you become a big real estate investor because it's hard. And I know how suicidal people can be when the push comes to shove. It's tough. And so again, how can every single part of your life, all these actions, funnel into this beautiful, fulfilling life that is part of your bigger story?
You are changing the world, and it is so fun to see what you're doing. What's next for you, Britnie?
Oh, good question. Well, in 2016, when I asked God, like, all right, how do I go from here to developing nations, which is what I really want to do, I heard start on islands. And I was like, islands. And that's just to wrap up the story on how I even got the island. It was this beautiful vision of taking people like our listeners right now, who have so much capacity and power to change the world, and they're potentially just drifting through life, not understanding how important they are and how much they do matter. They are here for a reason, and waking them up. How do you take the people that, again, potentially have the resources or have access to resources, wake them up to the people they're called to be, and then again, deploy them to go do the thing that they are called to do? And so that was the purpose of the island. And so it's
which by the way has the most rags to riches story, from hurricanes to more hurricanes to financial despair to personal tragedies and triumphs and all the things. We could talk for 10 hours and still not cover the layers of where you're at. And yet that island now is bringing such healing and restoration. I remember you saying that most people vacation to lose themselves, but Ariel is a place that people go to find themselves. Did I do justice to the quote?
You nailed it. Yeah.
Yes. And I literally, I found myself there. My wife, who's been 17 years an educator, that trip and that moment gave her the confidence to step away. And now she and I are doing a couples mastermind in the same kind of vein and framework. So when I say you're changing the world, you literally are changing the world, because people who have opportunity, which is my wife and myself, we need to be fed somewhere. And you're a person who leads leaders. And that's such a rare calling. And I'm just so grateful for it, Britnie.
I'm so happy to hear that you guys are doing that, because there's nothing like having a purpose partner in your life. Not just, I think this guy's cute at a bar and I think we can get along. I like the same team as he likes to watch on Saturdays.
Right.
But having clarity on your purpose and having a united and aligned front and a partner to truly do life with is one of the most exponential things I think you can do in your world. And so I've seen so many powerful people get knocked out of the game because of their relationships. So I'm really happy to hear y'all are doing that. And I hope you talk about it more on your podcast, because
Yeah, very much so.
Super needed.
Kara and Mike Ayala were at the island the same time that we were, and they run a couples masterminds. We're just copying them. And they have a tagline that says marriage is the ultimate mastermind. And it's such a beautiful framework of what a really powerful partnership can bring. And so I am thrilled to have you as a small piece of my life, because you're playing a big part in a small piece. And I'm forever grateful for that. Britnie, I'd love our audience to check you out. Is your website best? BritnieTurner.com?
BritnieTurner.com.
Okay, and it's Britnie. Sorry, Britney Spears, not that spelling. Britnie, Britnie is where you want to go for that. Thank you for the gifts you've given us, and I'm excited to see what's next in the chapters.
Thank you, Erik.
You bet. Folks, if you haven't done so yet, you need to take this. You need to share it with someone. There's somebody in your world right now that needs to hear what Britnie has to say. Maybe they've gone through some hardships and some doubts, and the gift that Britnie has given us is an accelerator for you to pass to somebody else. So do me a favor, share this podcast or this video with someone who maybe needs to hear it, and we can have a more beautiful, generational, generous kind of community. And so, Britnie, thank you. On behalf of everybody here, you've been listening to the Redefined podcast. My name is Erik Hatch, and we will catch you guys on the flippity flip.